Thank you, and good morning, and welcome to the Joint Committee on Labor and Civil Service and Public Property and Public Works, Monday, April 12th, 2021. I understand that the state law currently requires that the following announcement be made at the beginning of every public hearing as follows. Due to the current public health emergency, City Council committees are currently meeting remotely. We are using Microsoft Teams to make these remote hearings possible. Instructions for how the public may view and other public testimony at public hearings of council committees are included in the public hearing notices that are published in the Daily News, Inquirer, and Legal Intelligencer prior to the hearings and can also be found on phlcouncil.com. I note that the hour has come. Our clerk is Mr. Brazel. Would you please call the roll and take attendance? Members that are in attendance will please indicate that you are present when your name is called. Also, please say a few brief words in responding so that your image will be displayed on the screen when you speak. Mr. Brazel?
Councilmember Sherelle Parker?
Yes, present. Good morning, and thank you, Chairman Heenan, for your leadership on this issue.
Councilmember Mark Squilla?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and colleagues. Present.
Councilmember Helen Gim?
Good morning, council member. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, Mr. Chair. I am present.
Councilmember David O? Councilmember Alan Dom?
Good morning, Mr. Chair and colleagues. I'm present.
Councilmember Curtis Jones Jr., Councilmember Maria Quino Sanchez, Councilmember Brian O'Neill.
Good morning, everyone.
Councilmember Derek Green.
Clerk, I know Councilmember Green is present.
All right, I will mark him as present. Councilmember Catherine Gilmore Richardson and Chairman Bobby Heenan.
I am present. Thank you. A quorum of the committee, of both committees, are present at the hearing, and the hearing is now called to order. Again, this is a public hearing of the Joint Committees on Labor and Civil Service and Public Property and Public Works regarding resolution number 200251. And I want to thank our Joint Committee Chair, Council Member and Majority Leader Parker, and your committee for joining us here today on this resolution. Thank you so much. And the clerk, would you please read the title of the resolution?
Bill number 200521, authorizing the Committee on Public Property and Public Works and the Committee on Labor and Civil Service to hold joint hearings to evaluate the impact, effectiveness, experience, and outcomes of remote work during the COVID-19 pandemic on the City of Philadelphia's citizens, workforce, and calling on the City of Philadelphia to produce an action plan to guide future remote work of city employees.
Thank you. I want to make a correction for clarification. It is a resolution number 200521. Before we begin hearing testimony from the witnesses we have for today, everyone who has been invited to the meeting to testify should be aware that this is a public hearing, and this public hearing is being recorded. Because the hearing is public, participants and viewers have no reasonable expectation of privacy. By continuing to be in the meeting, you are consenting to being recorded. Additionally, prior to recognizing members for questions or comments they may have for witnesses, I will note for the record at this time that we will be using the chat feature available in Microsoft Teams to allow members to signify that they wish to be recognized in order to comply with the Sunshine Act. The chat feature must only be used for this purpose. Before we call the first witness for resolution number 200521, And my comment, does any of my colleagues wish to make an opening statement or comment on the resolution? Okay, great. Well, thank you. As stated, this is a resolution to discuss remote work in its various levels. The hearing goals today, I want to state for the record, is to evaluate the impact of remote work in the public sector on the city's effectiveness in service delivery, to evaluate the impact of remote work on the work experience of employees, to evaluate the impact of remote work on the financial performance of the city, how we evaluate and how we measure productivity and what factors go into those outcomes, to evaluate the equity in remote work, assess the impact of remote work on the use of our public buildings, evaluate the perception of the public. How does the public feel about the remote work model? Identify opportunities to improve work experience of employees and the public, and to urge the mayor and the city to conduct a comprehensive, in-depth assessment of remote work and to identify the type of work that can be effectively and be conducted remotely, and to identify these opportunities to save money, improve employee work-life satisfaction, and customer experience by embracing remote work. So this is the hearing goals. These are the hearing goals. With that, clerk, would you please read the first person to testify through the administration on panel 1, please? And thank you.
Stephanie Tipton.
Good morning. My name is Stephanie Tipton. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer for the City of Philadelphia. Good morning, Chairperson Parker, Chairperson Heenan, sponsor of the resolution, and other members of the Joint Committee. I'm joined today with other members of the administration to discuss the transition to and impact of remote work on city employees. Resolution number 200521 authorizes hearings to evaluate the impact, effectiveness, experience, and outcomes of remote work during COVID-19 and calls on the city to produce an action plan to guide future remote work for city employees. To give you some background on my office, the Chief Administrative Officer, or CAO, is charged with the oversight of the city's core administrative departments and functions, including the Office of Innovation and Technology, Human Resources and Talent, Records Department, Office of Administrative Review, Procurement Department, and Contracts Unit. The goal is to ensure that city services are efficient and effective, inclusive and equitable, transparent, and conducted with integrity. The CAO cluster and others provided and continue to provide critical support to city departments, residents, and the workforce as part of the city's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and in particular, the unprecedented shift to remote work for thousands of city employees. Some examples include enabling the near overnight transition to virtual work by providing the city workforce with equipment and technology necessary to maintain critical services, working with city departments to develop digital tools and automate various paper-based or in-person processes, supporting the city's workforce during an unprecedented crisis by providing resources for employee well-being and enacting policies to promote social distancing and employee and family health and safety, and leading the city's reopening efforts. Presently, there are approximately 5,833 employees throughout city government working from home, which represents almost 20% of the city's workforce. Throughout this transition to remote work, we've been able to identify areas of opportunity to improve the way we do business, while also keeping a keen focus on digital inclusion and access for both employees and those accessing city services. These changes and insights will become part of our new normal. I'd like to thank Councilmember Keenan for sponsoring the resolution and providing a forum to discuss both the opportunities and challenges of remote work. The CAO and the administration as a whole is committed to working together with members of City Council as well as our workforce, to address the important questions raised by remote work, as well as build upon the demonstrated successes and benefits. This concludes my testimony. I, along with other representatives from the administration, are happy to answer questions from the Joint Committee.
Well, thank you for your testimony, and your office is certainly critical for making sure that our city functions, right, functions with technology and in the spirit and goals that this city council would like to see from a policy perspective. I got a lot of questions, but I'm going to start off by saying, so this week, the mayor is going to be given his budget address, and has our experience over the past year and a half due to the pandemic and the challenges, is that going to be reflected in this year's budget introduction?
I can't speak specifically to, what's in everyone, various departments' budgets, but we've certainly taken into account sort of the infrastructure from a technology perspective that's necessary to enable remote work. And many of these costs, were or are reimbursable because they were in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And so in terms of a, technology perspective, we've certainly taken that into account in terms of the budget and what we need to enable employees to work from home. So
exactly. So the being the office that oversees the OIT and a lot of other technical infrastructure systems that we have in the city of Philadelphia, we saw, at least from my experience, we saw some challenges immediately, just like, the world saw challenges last March when everything, shut down instantly. But then we adjusted, and people were given the opportunity, or actually, some were given tools to work from home. And every year, the OIT, the Office of Information and Technology, submits its budget. And its budget is reflected into the capital budget for our infrastructure projects. Have those priority infrastructure projects changed due to the past year and a half?
I wouldn't necessarily say they've changed per se. I mean, I guess good news is pre-pandemic, we had began to invest through both the capital budget and our operating budget in various projects that would enable us to automate more of our processes that are done very manually. So, a good example is our Opal project, which is the replacement of some of our legacy financial and procurement systems. As you might imagine, a lot of that is very manual. We had already put money in the budget, both capital and operating, to begin that project, which we began last fiscal year. Obviously, due to some impacts on the budget this fiscal year, we had to pull back some of the timeline for the implementation of those things. But that is definitely something that was already contemplated and already budgeted and is continuing to move forward. I think, if anything, the pandemic highlighted how critical replacing some of our legacy technology is. And even though we had to push back the timeline for that large project, we did identify some areas, again, that we had already been exploring and looking at pre-pandemic, ways that we might be able to move from more manual paper-based processes to a more automated or digital process. So one example, I guess last month we had actually prior to last month, we had piloted with some departments sort of the automated or online submission of invoices by vendors. Right now, previously it was a very paper-based process. We were mailing physical invoices from vendors to departments. I think very, very early on in the pandemic, we realized that that is something that if we can figure out a way to do that electronically, let's do that, because someone having to come on site just to pick up mail and process an invoice, if there's a way that we can address that, it seemed like it would be a win-win for everybody. And so we really very quickly expanded upon the pilot that we had started prior to the pandemic. And I would say about a month or so ago, we rolled out a fully automated tool for vendors to submit invoices electronically and for us to process them electronically. So that is something, again, I think just to give you one example, we had already been working on, and if anything, the pandemic really, pushed that effort forward much quickly. And that was something that we had in the CAO's budget money for, and that was money that we tried to retain to ensure that we could get that technology launched.
And I certainly thank you for that. And I certainly know over the years by going through the capital budget when it comes to technology, because that's where a lot of the technical costs would be in the infrastructure. And so my question is leading into, like, has our priority changed in investing more upfront now to streamline some of these capital investments? And how much of a change has the technology investment when it comes to pre-pandemic and as we currently sit, and we're looking to get out of it? How much has the budget changed in 2019 versus FY20? Shifting
sure.
our priorities.
Sure. So,
if you don't know the answer to that, would you be able to provide that to us?
Definitely. So, unfortunately, our CIO is sick today, so he couldn't join us to give a lot more specifics on this. But what I can say is that, from the beginning of the pandemic, we definitely saw that we had a lot of employees that were not enabled with, things like laptops, or had the ability, had sufficient, Wi-Fi, et cetera. And so I would say, probably since the beginning of the pandemic, we've spent nearly $8 million to enable various things like the provisioning of laptops, MiFi, hotspots, et cetera. And I would say that at this point, any department that had reached out to us and said, we need this type of equipment for our employees to get them enabled to do remote work, probably 95% of those requests have been fulfilled at this point. And that is something that we'll continue to ensure is budgeted as part of our budget moving forward. Another piece that, we had to invest in a little bit more, and that's reflected in our budget as well, are some of the telecommunication tools that we use. So, pre-pandemic, we had a few departments that were piloting Teams. Not many departments were using it. And as you can see here, Teams has become one of the critical tools by which we are doing our meetings, our virtual hearings, et cetera. And so we had to invest in a lot of the licensing around those things. So I would say, if anything, the pandemic asserted sort of the direction we were already going in terms of the investments we were making with not only sort of some of the equipment, but also the infrastructure that we had already planned to invest in. So I wouldn't say that investment has changed. If anything, it's pretty much been sustained, and in some ways we've had to adjust to enable providing more equipment to employees. And I can also get you more information too.
That's all right. And then when we can continue to have this conversation, offline, and I think other members might want to do the same. It's not changing as much as prioritizing and funding these investments and systems that might have been talked about for years, and it's become more of a necessity, I believe, at at this point. I have one more comment, and then I'm gonna turn it over because I do have a list of questions, and I don't want to, be the, taking up a lot of time, and which I will yield. So there's a lot of research out in the private sector, from Bloomberg, Brookings, American Psychology Association, Harvard, and many more, and that is. And it pertains to the private sector and not much on and in government. All right, because we have the very deliberate, systematic cinch, forward progress. This way, drastic change doesn't have a drastic impact, but working towards it. I think we have a lot of. I think if the city can perform a comprehensive study and integrating, the talent pool. And I know next up on the line of question is Council Member Dom, who is always talking about data, who is always talking about the talent in the IT world, which is a growing sector. And I'm curious from an HR standpoint, which you oversee, how our talented IT people in our private sector has been affected, and how that will, help benefit the city as we recover, and if there are any positions that remain open for those opportunities.
I can certainly provide more information to you on some of the open IT positions and where we might have some difficulty or challenges in filling them. I will say that, probably where I think we'll see a benefit with having more robust remote work policies is in recruitment. I definitely think that is a benefit for folks to have sort of that ability to work from home, as well as some of the flexibility that can come with that. I think it's just going to be a really powerful tool to attract talent to the city. I don't think it's going to diminish some of the challenges we have in filling some of our positions. We still have a residency requirement, which can be challenging, especially for folks who might be mid or far along in their careers, and they have families that they might be sort of moving into the city. And that's not to say that we don't have a pool of talent here too, but that sometimes can pose some of the challenges that we see with some of our tech positions. But certainly I do see a benefit to recruitment in having a work from home policy that is more robust than what we had pre-pandemic.
All right. And, I want to be clear. I'm not suggesting that we, have 20 or 50% of our workforce work from home.
Right.
The world changed, and we're in a service complaint-driven industry, but we can be proactive about things with a little bit of flexibility, but we can't do any of that if we don't have the technology for that. And if we don't do that, we're not going to be able to feed and help support our current city employees in making sure that the services are, or what the general public expects. So with that, Chair recognizes Council Member Dom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your questions. I thought they were very good. And good morning, Stephanie.
Good morning.
I have a few questions. I just want to clarify, total employees in the city of Philadelphia right now, what is the total number of full and part-time?
I think Mike might be on the call. I think it's around 30,000. I don't know if that includes part-time as well, but we're looking at about 30,000, about that, city employees.
And those employees, do we require residency for all? I know like police probably don't, but do we require residency for the rest?
We do. So for exempt employees, they have to move into the city within 6 months of their hiring. For all other employees, you'll know that Council did pass an ordinance which has been implemented that requires that applicants to city exams have a residency of 1 year before they can apply. So yes, I mean there are definitely residency requirements for all of our employees.
Because I'm thinking when I'm listening to this hearing about the wage tax, I just want to make sure we're not going to lose any wage taxes here. So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay. When the city shut down because of COVID-19, when did the city implement basically the work from home procedures? When did that occur?
So we had always had, I shouldn't say always, but for a few years pre-pandemic, we did have a work from home policy that I would say was very ad hoc. So it was very limited to exempt employees. It was, for sort of emergent things that might happen. I have a contractor coming to my house, so I need to stay at home. So it was pretty limited. As more news was coming out about the pandemic, and as we, even before we sort of shut down, city government buildings and sent a lot of our employees home, we had already started to have conversations about revising the work from home policy, as well as adjusting some of our HR policies around that. And so probably within the first, I want to say like the first week that we actually sort of shut down city, city offices and really just focus on essential services and send a lot of our workforce home, we did issue a more expansive work from home policy to adjust some of the requirements in response to the pandemic. So it obviously became much more expansive. It applied to any type of employee, so long as it was determined that their job could be done sufficiently from home, and that we enabled them with the technology to do that. I would say that probably after a month or two of us being in the pandemic, we realized that we're going to be working from home for quite some time, and B, I think once we got over sort of the initial culture change of working from home, more people, I think more employees, more departments saw like, hey, this could be something that we can maybe work into our regular schedule. Maybe there is some benefit either to employee satisfaction, recruitment, or even just productivity. And so we did adjust the policy and made it our permanent work from home policy. So it's much more expansive. Like I said, it applies to any type of employee whose job can be done remotely. And it allows departments, once we get through sort of this pandemic, to have work from home as a regular part of an employee schedule based on the operation of the department and what makes sense for both the employee and the department itself. So, we adjusted very quickly in terms of our policies and procedures around work from home, at the very beginning of the pandemic.
Right now, as we stand here today, how many city employees are working from home and how many are working in city offices?
So we have about 5,800 employees right now who are working from home. This is just based on the most recent, time sheet data from One Philly. So, that's, like I said, it's like 19.4% of the entire workforce. So I would say that, that the delta has obviously changed between beginning of the pandemic to now. We probably have a few more employees who are working on site than we did at the very beginning of the pandemic. But I would say that the vast majority of city employees were working in roles that could not be done from home. The bulk of our workforce are our uniform departments. And so we had a lot of employees, nearly half of our workforce, when you include uniform, street sanitation, other sort of critical functions that had to be done on site. They're just not jobs that can be done from home. That was probably nearly half of our workforce from the very beginning that were working on site. I would say that we probably had initially more employees who were on excused time initially until we were able to sort of catch up with the technology and getting them the equipment they needed. So, at the beginning of the pandemic, there were supply chain issues even with technology. And so it took us a little time to get all the orders in. But I would say probably by, the fourth, fifth month, we were able to really get out and provision the technology necessary to employees who could, do the work from home once they had the technology to do it.
So right now we're at about 20% roughly of our workforce is remote currently.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Do we have any kind of statistics on the workforce that worked from home during the pandemic in 2020? Their productivity versus the productivity of 2019?
I wouldn't say that we have, exact measures on the productivity. I can probably provide you with some anecdotal stories around where I think we did see improvements in productivity or just the overall performance. For example, one of the functions that falls under the Chief Administrative Officer is our Office of Administrative Review. That's part of that is the Bureau of Administrative Adjudication, our Tax Review Board, et cetera. And so if you're appealing a parking ticket or, you have some other code violation that needs to be appealed, we, after we got through sort of the first few months of the pandemic and getting sort of our feet underneath us, we were able to enable many of those employees to do some work from home. We still had to ensure, though, that residents that may not have as much access to online tools or equipment or Wi-Fi were still able to do some of their hearings in person. And so we enabled sort of a hybrid approach. And I can say that, they have been able to get through an incredible backlog that they had. Now they're doing hearings within a week of someone asking to be heard, which is, we've never had that kind of turnaround. Part of it is also a reduced volume, but part of it is we've seen that this is a model that provides a lot more productivity and we can improve our performance. So we probably won't go back to the way that we were doing things based on that. We can have hearings much faster with folks and get the appeals heard in a much faster way. So that's just one example I can give you, and I'm sure there's other examples of that across city government.
Is it possible that we look at the department goals of 2019 and what they achieved and compare them to the department goals of 2020 so that you could have a basis to see the performance levels?
Yes, certainly, with the performance measures that are collected as part of the budget on a quarterly basis, I think we could do that. I can follow up with our budget office that really holds all of those performance measures to see what kind of information we might be able to provide.
I definitely think we're going to find areas where we're way more productive, and we should duplicate what we're doing there in other areas. So that's the reason for that.
Mm-hmm.
The other question is around cost. Have you done any analysis as to what potential costs were for the additional technology versus what the savings might be on the real estate side as far as office space and other expenses?
So I can tell you in terms of technology, we spent about $7.6 million on laptops and licensing for different telecommunication tools that we're using for security, which had to be enhanced. Now that we're moving to a more remote workforce, security is obviously a huge issue and concern. So we did invest in some of our security as well. In terms of the cost for, lease space, I don't have the exact cost of that, and we can certainly follow up with more information on what that looks like for us this fiscal year as opposed to last fiscal year.
I just think if we're gonna get to some more remote workers than we had before, we might have some office spaces we can save money on, and that might be helpful. And also, I don't know if it's possible that $7.6 million. Let's just say that's COVID-related technology expenses. And you may not have the answer, maybe you could find out. Is that reimbursable from the federal government?
Yeah, I think I have more information on exactly how much of that was reimbursed or is slated to be reimbursed, but I think much of it is because it is COVID-related.
All right, well, thank you very much. Thanks for your testimony. And thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. And I think your line of questionings, along with other members who will be asking questions, will be, totally appropriate as well to continue during the budget process. Chair recognizes Council Member Parker, who is also the chair of the Labor and Civil Service Committee. Councilmember Parker.
Thank you, Chairman Heenan, and good morning, Stephanie. And Stephanie, before I even speak, you already know where I'm going. I just need to get this on the record, okay? Yep. I need to clarify on the record that the bill that I introduced on behalf of our council president that was passed by this council, bill number 200363, it does not, I want to repeat, it does not in any way, shape, or form preclude people from applying for a job if they haven't lived in the city for a year. Specifically, the language says that no person shall be appointed unless they live here for 1 year. In addition to that, I need to put on the record that there is a waiver. We have a waiver process that anyone can get, any department head. If there's some talent that we in the city are seeking, and a person is not in compliance with that legislation, they can get a waiver from our human resources department. But I do also want to state this, and the reason why I needed to get this on the record, because I've just gotten, Stephanie, my first complaint from someone about this issue, stating that the police department is not even allowing people to take the test if they haven't lived here for a year. And if anybody is, if that is the case, and I don't know yet, Stephanie, because we still have to be in contact with the police department to figure out if that is a policy and or an approach that they have developed. If they are doing it, it is an over interpretation of the law. And so we're going to be looking out for this. The 1 year residency requirement was also the law of the land for 55 years here in Philadelphia. And so I really don't even understand, why we can't figure out the waiver process. That's a little trying for me. There are people who work for city government now who were here before 2008 when the 1 year residency requirement was in place. So Stephanie, I just, again, I'm not asking you to respond. I am researching that over prescription of the law, particularly as it relates to even allowing people to apply. Not even allowing people to take the test, I would say, in the police department. As soon as I get some concrete information, I'll make sure that I'm back in touch with you, Stephanie. But I just wanted to note that for the record, because Stephanie referenced that in one of her responses to Councilmember Heenan or either Councilmember Dom's question. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, for the latitude.
Thank you, Councilmember Parker, and thank you for that clarity, because I think it is important for people to understand, what legislation we actually pass and what it says when it comes to, the general public and our knowledge. We don't want misinformation out there because that can create issues that really aren't a problem. So thank you for that. Are there any other members that have any questions? Chair recognizes one. We are joined here in today's joint hearing by along with Councilmember O, and he just indicated that he is going to leave and return momentarily. So if he comes back, he has any questions, we will certainly be here. I have a couple other questions, if I may. So what steps were taken to ensure that the employees required to work with home had the required technology supports to complete the job and task at hand? And what were the costs associated with that? I missed that. Was that one of the questions earlier in today's hearing?
Yeah, that's okay. So we spent about $7.6 million on the provisioning of technology, telecommunication tools, so different licenses for things like Teams or WebEx or Zoom, as well as some of our bolstered security that we needed to put into place to enable more employees to take technology home. In terms of the steps that we took, so at the very beginning of the pandemic, we actually met with most of our large operating departments to talk through sort of, what services were necessary to sort of, for lack of a better term, bring back online. So if there were things that, at the beginning of the pandemic, we did a pretty significant shutdown of pretty much everything except those things that were just completely essential and critical. After probably about 2 or 3 weeks, we realized, we had to sort of transition. Probably more things had to be sort of brought back online because we were going to be in sort of this position for quite some time. So we actually met with every department. We had members from my team as part of those calls, so OIT, procurement, public property, labor, HR. We met with each department individually to talk about sort of what their needs were. And so departments were able to talk through, the requests that they had made for technology, who was still needing technology, any other sort of ways that we could help them automate or digitize certain processes to enable work that maybe traditionally had to be done on site, doing it on home. And so we did sort of that assessment with all of those departments. And I would say after those, we were able to, provide a lot of the employees with the, requisite technology that they needed. We then also, probably a few months into the pandemic, when we were starting to reopen a little bit more, we had additional meetings with departments to talk with them more about, if you are going to bring some employees back onto site, safety protocols, what do you need for your space, et cetera. And then also reassess some of the technology that they were still needing and also talking through, other things that they might need to purchase from PPE to cleaning supplies, et cetera. And so, I would say that we had like a very robust way in which we were sort of meeting individually with departments to understand their needs and identify where, they needed, there was still some gaps in terms of the technology, and then also any other sort of process things that we could help them change or support those changes that would enable some more work to be done from home than done on site.
Okay, thank you. And before I recognize another council member, just a couple of follow-up questions on my end, and it was discussed earlier in the hearing. So you had mentioned roughly 20% of our workforce is working remotely, with the tools necessary, which is I'm glad to hear, which means roughly 75% are working either out in the field or touchdowning in some office space somewhere.
Yes.
I ask public property, as chair of public property, for the nearly 10 years now, every budget hearing, I asked, what do we, as public property, what does the city own? What do we lease? What are those costs? What is the square footage of our buildings and or lease space? How many employees are in that space? What is storage space? Are they part-time? Are they out in the field? So I think in lieu of not getting a very comprehensive asset evaluation in the past years, it's more fitting to have this conversation now during this budget hearing than ever before. And it's not just because of COVID. COVID just made us, recognize, certain things and how we operate, and what can we do to help support our employees, full-time and part-time, for better services. So I'm going to be asking those questions again, as always, every year. And I think Councilmember Dom had asked, and if you don't know the answer, or we'll get it prior to the budget. if 80% or 75% of our workforce, that's, roughly, 23,000 and some change employees, full and part-time, what amount of space are they working in all our buildings, and are our buildings fully operating to accommodate them safely? So you can, if you know the answer to that, that's great. If you don't, we can, you can provide it to the chair, and I'll make sure it gets out.
Sure. I mean, we can. I can follow up with public property on that. I will say that we will be meeting with the departments that have the highest number of employees who are working from home, similar to what we did at the beginning of the pandemic, to talk through sort of their needs, what their sort of new normal, if you will, is going to look like. And that's both in terms of, technology, the scheduling of employees, and, and also space. So, for departments that might have a lot of employees still working from home and may want to continue to have some portion of their employees working from home, what does that mean for your space? Do you need all the space? Do you just need hoteling space, et cetera, touchdown space, if you will? So those are going to be part of the discussions that we're going to have with those departments specifically, because I think it's the right questions. Those are the right questions to ask. When we do have, the vast majority of employees are working on site, but there are, 20% of our employees who are still working from home, and will probably continue to do so in some way, even once we get through the pandemic itself.
And that'll be great. And if you could also add to that, as you do your due diligence, which I know you will and you have, those who are working out in the field, such as DHS workers and those who are visiting homes, put themselves in danger, during the pandemic. Do they have the tools and technology, all right, to constantly to communicate so they can asset or assess children, all right, in potentially dangerous or complaint-driven situations, to visiting, making house calls, for whatever reason they do, but they're doing a lot of hard work, and they're putting themselves at health risk at times, but take the health risk out. They still need the tools to do their job as we move forward.
Right.
Chair recognizes Councilmember Dom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a comment. I'm listening to the hearing today, and I'm thinking to myself that it is so important for cities like Philadelphia and other cities with this remote working situation to understand there's future. And the future mainly now is going to be the quality of life in the city and the lifestyle of the city. Because people now have choices, and people don't have to work in cities or go to work in cities. They can work remotely. Just as a general comment, but it's very important for us as a city to understand that we need to be very competitive across the board, whether it's in lifestyle, taxation policies. I introduced 3 bills last week. One was around wage tax reduction. And overall, when you think about the homicide rate in the city and the crime, this all connects. And it's really important for us all to work together, because we need Philadelphia to be really strong. And I'm just mentioning this because over the weekend, I had 4 or 5 people who I know who live in New York City tell me they're leaving, telling me they're not coming back, telling me how many companies are leaving. And, that all affects all of us. So I just want to make sure that we are really focused on quality of life, lifestyle, economic benefits for our residents to make sure they come back. So I just wanted to make that statement, Mr. Chair, and I know we're all focused on it, but everything we do as a city right now is very important for us to be more competitive. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. And I think, I agree. We went through, unprecedented times, but times that we can plan smartly for the future. My last question, and then we'll move on to our next panel, is do you have the demographics of the employees working at homes? working at home remotely?
I do. I can, if you want, do you want me to share those with the chair following the hearing? But we do have the demographics based on the most recent time card data. So about almost 50%, or 49%, are Black or African American employees, and 36% are white, and then the remaining are sort of divided amongst Asian is the next category, and then Hispanic or Latino. But I can provide all the data if that's helpful to the chair.
Okay, great. When council members and our committees debrief, we'll do some follow up on in-depth questions for data. So thank you for having that available and ready for the members and the viewers. Are there any other members of the committees that have any questions for Stephanie? And I want to thank you for being prepared for today's hearing, and thank you for attending. That's all we have for our committee. For you, if you can, stand by and be available, we would appreciate it. But again, thank you so much for your time. Clerk, would you please read our next panelists?
All right, April Getz, Janae Hawthorne, Lena, Huey, and David Harris.
Good morning. Thank you for your patience. April, welcome. You may state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you. My name is April Getz. Good morning, Chairs Heenan and Parkin, and members of the committees. Again, my name is April Getz. I am president of ASME Local 2187, District Council 47. My local represents the non-supervisory, administrative, professional, and technical employees of the city. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony today concerning Resolution 200521. Alternative work schedules, including remote work, has long been an area of interest for the members of Local 2187, and for multiple collective bargaining agreements, we have obtained agreements with the city to develop a process to address various alternative work schedules on behalf of our members. Unfortunately, the city was very slow in addressing these issues, delegating the discussions to each individual department. The pandemic forced both the private and public sector to be creative concerning work schedules. Local 2187 was able to negotiate many varying schedules that accommodated both departmental operational needs and the health and safety of my members. The schedules varied depending on the work members performed, but mainly included working from home, rotational schedules, which involve 1 week on and 1 week off, mainly because of the inability of the department to provide the infrastructure and equipment needed to work from home, hybrid schedules consisting of a couple of days in the office and a couple of days working from home, and having some members who work in the field work from their cars so they didn't have to report to district offices where social distancing cannot be achieved. To be sure, accomplishing this was not always easy. Each department had the autonomy to decide their own situations. Some commissioners or department heads were flexible, even when the challenges of acquiring laptops when demand was high. Without a citywide policy on working from homes and how that is determined, negotiating was daunting, especially when some commissioners were not cooperative. Prisons, as an example, still to this day will not allow members doing primarily administrative work to work from home. The feedback that I have received has been positive, and the overall alternative work programs have been successful. To date, I have not received any reports of poor work performance or any discipline concerning work performance. I now know these types of alternative work schedules can work for city employees. The city has continued to function and services continue to be offered to the residents of Philadelphia. This successful flexibility and methods of working makes the city competitive and attractive to private sector workers and enhances the recruitment of prospective employee candidates. These schedules were certainly a relief to my members that have been concerned about their safety. It was beneficial when childcare became an issue when the school district went virtual. Honestly, this has been a win for the city, for our members, and for those whom Philadelphia provides services. I would request that AFSCME District Council 47 and Local 2187 be included in any assessment of the impact of remote work during the COVID-19 pandemic and any action plan that would be developed to guide future remote work. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony today and answer any questions the committees may have. Thank you.
Janae Hawthorne.
Good morning. My name is Janae Hawthorne. I would like to say good morning to Chairs Heenan and Parker, members of the committee, as well as all other parties here today. Like I said before, my name is Janae Hawthorne, and I'm a member of AFSCME DC 47, Local 2187, working as a health program management analyst within DBH IDS. I'm here today to provide testimony concerning Resolution 200521 and my remotely since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. As we all know, COVID-19 upended life as we knew it. As a current Johns Hopkins public health doctoral student, I knew that a 2-week shutdown was unrealistic. Despite all of the loss that everyone has experienced because of this non-discriminatory virus, there was one significant positive outcome for a good amount of city workers in this last year, working from home. Sufficient break from the hustle and bustle of what people may call adulting since my daughter's birth in 2009. With all of that my family is involved in, my daughter plays soccer. My husband and I both coach Philadelphia youth, as well as being members on community organization boards. Working from home has enabled me to have a better work life, less commute stress, and increased productivity and performance. I can also genuinely state that most of the working the future of a happier, healthier, and more efficient workplace. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Lena Hewley.
Good morning. I'm Lena Huey. Without leaving anyone out, I'm saying good morning to all. It's an honor to be able to testify this morning and for me to share my experience with working from home. Since working from home and being a mother of 3 small children, one which so happens to be a toddler, their ages range from 3 years old, 8 years old, and 12 years old. This has allowed me the flexibility not only to work, but also to be able to teach and assist my children on a daily basis. Working from home has also reduced stress and has also allowed for me to care for my parent, who I am now a caregiver for as well. Can you hear me? Hello? I'm so sorry. I think I'm having audio issues.
You went out for a second, but we can hear you. Now we can't hear you.
Lena. Lena, with what we're going to do, Clerk, would you ask David, our next panelist, to speak, and then when Lena comes back and joins us, she'll be up for her testimony.
Okay, David Harris.
Good morning, everyone. My name is David Harris. I work out of the Philadelphia Water Department as a service rep, and I wanted to be clear. I was listening to everybody testify, and that made me realize even more the importance of just saying thank you for the opportunity to be included. Oftentimes decisions are made and maybe management is included, but a lot of the rank and file isn't. So I just want to say thank you, and I'm grateful for this opportunity to participate. Now, with regard to working from home, this pandemic, it hit the country like a bomb, and no one could have been prepared for it. And there are so many additional benefits that come from working from home. As someone with an elderly parent whom requires care, the versatility of being able to take them to doctor's appointments, be there when they need you, as well as continue to get the work done. We have situations where if there's a computer problem or an issue of any kind, we can reach out to IT. They immediately respond. They immediately assist us with what needs to be done. We don't deal in our unit specifically face-to-face with the public, which means there's really not a necessity for us to be in the office. If the work is being completed and it's completed in a timely fashion, then working from home is a benefit, not just to the staff, but to the city as well, because all success should be circular. If everyone in the relationship benefits, then the relationship is a beneficial relationship. Our customers are still getting the service that they need. They're still able to reach us when they need be. We're safe. We're home. We're in a comfortable environment, which makes performance even better. It's also important that we're essential in our department, so we have to work regardless. So because of that, being home and being safe, there's a health reduction on our part. We're not exposed. And again, and I reiterate, we're always able to assist our residents in the city, which is the most important thing. As far as management, and I can speak specifically as far as with our supervisors, whenever there's an issue with a customer and I need to reach out to a supervisor, when we're in the office, you call in the queue. We're calling our supervisors directly now, and our supervisors are responding. We're giving the customers everything they need. Even if we come in and the numbers may be extremely high, by the end of the day, we're able to get everything done because the people are working in a more comfortable environment and they feel safer, again, which gives them the opportunity to perform at a higher clip. And I understand that there's budget issues and things of that nature that come into play, but collectively as a city, the city can be more successful when the workers are more comfortable and the workers feel safer. And I think, again, specifically in our unit, the work has been done, it's been completed correctly. The supervisors are given the best information we need to relate to the customers. And I think all in all, while there are some challenges, collectively working from home is an extreme benefit, not just for us, but for our residents as well. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, David.
All right.
I think Lena has joined us again. Lena, are you there?
I am, and I do apologize for that.
All good, no worry.
Great.
You may proceed again with your testimony.
Thank you so kindly. As my colleague stated, I am also an employee with the Philadelphia Water Department. And working from home has definitely served me and my family very well. Of course, with this novel coronavirus, no one was prepared for this at all. And I find that it provided me a better work-life balance in the sense of, as I stated before I went out, I am the mother of 3 children, school-age children at that. No one was prepared, at least I was not, to become a teacher, to become a daycare provider, and to become a middle school teacher as well. And also working a full-time job. I'm an essential employee with the water department, so I've never stopped working since the virus. My husband is also an essential employee, and he has to be in the field. So I was left alone to man the forces at home. The responsibility, the bar was raised when it came to being a teacher for the children. There were no ifs, ands, or buts about it. School had to continue on as well as work. So, this allowed for me to be able to be very productive in scheduling my work in as far as making sure that the children understood what they needed to do and providing them with the tools that they needed. Working from home in our department, we were able to get the tools that we needed. If there were any issues or concerns in terms of IT, they were phenomenal. Any questions or concerns, we emailed our supervisor, mine, which is Mrs. Ali, and she would forward that to our IT team, who responded very quickly and precisely. I find that also not being able to have to commute every day is a definite asset. Again, my children attend school and daycare in the city area where I work, and it has saved hours of commuting. It has saved money on gas and also stress. Commuting as a downside is, is wasted time. So working at home has allowed for me, it's a benefit because it has also allowed for me to dive into work, and I don't have to worry about spending that money and utilizing now that money in terms of not spending the money on commuting or daycare. We have been able to put that money in a account for our children for college. So all the money that we would normally spend on childcare, aftercare, and commute, along with lunch and wardrobe, we have now created 3 separate accounts for our children for their college fund. So that has definitely been an asset. I am unfortunately an individual that has multiple underlying issues. So with this virus, I had to be extra careful. So being at home and also continuing to be a great asset to my department has definitely been a win-win. I am able to be very productive. It's important for me to see our deadlines through, and the bottom line is to get the job done. So working from home has not only allowed for me to have a greater loyalty, I should say, to the city of Philadelphia and my department, but it has also helped me with my self-esteem and being proud of being in that department. Because with all departments in the city of Philadelphia, there is some politics. Of course, there's chatter. So working from home allows for me to work very independently and not having to be face-to-face. But it has also developed a greater line of communication with my supervisor and also with my management team. And I don't think that I would have had that opportunity if we didn't have this novel fluid virus that's going on. Also, I'm very interested and have always been concerned about global warming. Since we've been home, pollution has been reduced. We don't have to worry about, the traffic and so forth. And that has been a definite win-win for the city as well. And I did make mention that, I am taking care of my parent. I have a mother who's in her 90s now. She's still able to live alone. And just the work stress balance has also been reduced because now by me being home, I don't have to, so to speak, really worry about, what's going on with my parent while I'm at work. I am now able to definitely make sure that, her needs are being met as well, and that, my work has not suffered by me doing so. I thank you so much for this opportunity to give my testimony this morning. If you have any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. If you can, hang on the line, we would all appreciate it. Clerk, would you please read our last panelists?
Councilman, do you want me to add Ann to this panel, or do you want me to have her be the third panel?
If Ann is on the call, we'd love for her to be a panelist.
Okay, so Ann Gemmel.
Hi, Councilman Heenan and Councilwoman Parker. Thanks for calling this hearing about remote work. I submitted written testimony, but I'll keep it really short because I think we've heard from voices from the city, city workforce that really echo some of the points that I've made. Again, my name is Ann Gemmel. I used to work for the Office of Workforce Development under the Kennedy administration, but recently founded FutureWorks Alliance Philadelphia, which is a nonprofit that is working to strengthen our talent pool and do more long-term collective equity-driven scenario planning for the future of work. We all know what has happened with the pandemic. Remote work is here to stay in some form or another. However, I think the move that I want to make for my testimony is that it really will vary quite widely from industry to industry, from company to company, and from region to region, how much of a percentage of each workforce will go fully remote, will be fully back in the office, or some mix of what we're seeing called hybrid in different circles. And so we don't know. And that's very typical of the future of work, is that, really strategic planning is by and large a dead art. Now leaders of the public and private sector need to become comfortable with perpetual change, because digital transformation is accelerating and it will affect all the ways that we live and work. And so this perpetual change environment that all of us have experienced in the pandemic is actually the new normal. And leaders need to become more comfortable with constantly collecting data from trusted sources in the private sector. I would hope that the Commerce Department and the Revenue Department and City Council, for instance, are teaming up to, survey our major employers and find out exactly what is going to be their policy, so that we have a talent pool and a market that is somewhat consistent and understands, where the trends are going regionally. This has impact on our city revenues. It has impact on how many people are riding SEPTA. It has impact on our sales tax, foot traffic in Center City. The list goes on. So constantly bringing in new information, setting up trusted pipelines of data, trusted pipelines of information to inform this. And the city of Philadelphia as an employer is no different. Most companies right now are busy surveying their employers to find out how is their well-being, how is it working, what are their needs in a work-from-home environment, and what is their preference. That said, employee preference is really just one factor that all enterprises are going to take into account. Ultimately, it rests on three factors.
Did you hear me?
Yeah. I'm sorry. Can you all hear me?
Yes, Dan, we can hear you.
Okay. The decision to decide what percentage of your workforce will be remote work and for how many days of the week is on, that decision needs to be made department by department based on three different factors, in my view: productivity and performance management, equity. Sorry, there's a parrot in the background. Equity and talent attraction. So all occupations are not the same. Some occupations are in higher demand than others, but the biggest factor really is productivity. We heard from some great workers that obviously have, they have good situations. This is working well for them. But the question really has to be, from a taxpayer perspective, what is happening to productivity as the workforce shifts to remote work? So given the fact that the Office of Performance Management was eliminated not too long ago, exactly what are the productivity measures department by department? In my experience inside of city government, I worked in 3 different departments over the course of 4 years. It varies very widely how performance is managed. My most recent position, I wrote my own performance management review, which, didn't feel very authentic. So, exactly how is performance being managed? That's how we will know, what is happening to productivity. And that's how we will really know if remote work is working. So employee preference is certainly one thing, and a really important thing. The well-being, long-term of workers ultimately affects the service we give to citizens. But, the overall thing really is productivity, talent management, and equity. So real quick, one of the things that I feel the city needs is an overarching talent strategy, and remote work department by department should be a part of an overarching talent strategy. every company, as we enter this age and in this age of known as the future of work, of rapid technological change, knows that people are the most important thing. The talent that you have and the skills that make us uniquely human are the highest value skills. And so if your employees prefer working from home and that's going to retain top talent, that certainly is a bigger factor. So, in closing, I think the biggest thing is that we really need data on a regular basis from departments about how they're retaining and, attracting and retaining talent. How are they making, how is work from home affecting equity? Many departments, let's be honest, are stuck in a, culture of like, it's who you know to get promotions. It's who you know about, plum assignments instead of pure performance. And so if we do authentically start to manage our workforce in a more, with more departments in a more highly professional way, where you do have purely performance-based assessments of how the department is doing, how the units are doing, we can really move into the modern era and away from a culture of, favoritism and who that's an anti-equity culture. And so those three things are really my main points to make here today. And also, echoing what Councilman Dom said about, Philadelphia, I couldn't agree more. One of the collective strategic collaborations that the Future Works Alliance will be doing in the next month or so is developing a branding strategy for Philadelphia to attract and retain our skilled independent contractors, the people who can work from anywhere, and to attract more people who are tired of paying New York City and Washington, D.C. rents. Philly is a great place for them. We have a lot to offer to a work from home worker, with our city of neighborhoods and pedestrian culture, parks, et cetera. The list goes on. I'm a big fan of the city, as many of you know. So to echo that, I agree. It is all about quality of life and, the wage tax and the climate for the tax climate for independent contractors and other employees who can work for employers anywhere is a real detriment. We need to address that. We need to modernize, and really think about, building our tax base for a work from anywhere future of work. I'm happy to hang on and take any questions. Thanks for the opportunity. It's good to quote unquote see all of you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Clerk, do we have any other panelists on this last panel?
No, that is it.
Okay, thank you. Before I open it up for any questions of the committee, and or if there is anyone else that has joined this public joint hearing today, if they still wish to have any kind of public comment or testify, I want to thank this panel, especially the employees in April. I know you have been representing members for a long time, and just know, I think a few things that you had mentioned about being included on a comprehensive plan and study is, I think, critical, especially when it comes to negotiating with the city. DC 47, and I know DC 33 will be in a similar situation. So I think there's a lot to discuss at the bargaining table as you move forward, and as we move forward with the city and our essential employees and having the tools that we can utilize safely. But people need to be included. Listening to members of 47 and 33 here, and some, and Gemmel, it reminds me of, I introduced a bill in last session, and then we were hit with COVID, so I haven't reintroduced it, paid family leave, right? But it reminds me of this talent that Alan, Dom, and Ann, and there others have been talking about when it comes to retention, and when it comes to having a balance, taking care of loved ones, taking care of their family while still producing for the city and having the tools to do so. And And I think everybody's right. All right, this is not a one size fit all kind of new normal. All right, when we're trying to figure out what the new normal is. All right, so if everybody's included, all right, if the city can conduct a comprehensive plan and start having these conversations sooner than later, all right, then we will be inclusive. We'll speak with members. We'll speak with labor representatives. We'll speak with nonprofits and the private sector, right, to address some of these issues that's being brought up today, and many more issues that we'll have to dig deep in. So I think this is very informative. I think the question is, can we shift to work remote? How much can we shift, and what will it look like? Will depend upon, how included we are in a comprehensive study. So I don't have any. I guess that's more of a statement than any questions. So I want for being here. Any members of the committees wish to have any parting comments or questions before we conclude? Anybody else here who has not been recognized in today's hearing wish to be recognized? All right. With that, I want to thank again all my members of the committees and today's hearings. I'm going to thank all of you, all the panelists, and the city for being prepared and being here for that. This will conclude the hearing of joint hearing of Labor and Civil Service, Public Property, and Public Works. This resolution 200521 will be held at the call of the chair and will reconvene at a further date. So I want to thank you all for your attendance today and have a blessed and safe day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.